Good afternoon. Thanks for coming to our little workshop. We stand here as two teachers from Northside Christian College. We are not a liberal arts college at all. We are a mainstream Christian college, but we made a bit of a crazy decision at the end of term 2. We were moving into a unit in term 3 where students would either study Animal Farm or 1984. And I said to Riley, who was already a little bit on the page with classical education, why don't we just do this novel study a little bit differently and try the Socratic Seminar? We have no idea what we're doing, but we're just going to have a crack. That kind of very, very casual sort of, let's just have a go, see what happens. And that's why we're here today, because we're not standing here as experts, more so showing you that if we can do it, you can do it too, because we found it to be a extremely surprising and rewarding experience in just a really short period of time.
Yep.
I'm doing this.
So here's our agenda for today. We're hoping to walk you through kind of what the difference between Socratic questioning and Socratic seminars are, what exactly we did differently than just posing questions to our students in our class, the why behind why we made that choice, the barriers and then challenges along the way that we stumbled our way through, the tools and resources that we developed and found elsewhere, particularly from educators in the States, what worked really well for us and some of the stories and successes that come from our classrooms, what we would do differently upon reflection as we sit at the very back end of the term that we've first introduced this, and then we'll give an opportunity for you to have a crack at a Socratic seminar.
So we're very much teachers, and you guys are going to have a chance to get together into a Socratic seminar today and experience the structured Socratic seminar that we used in class. So thanks for being a part of it.
Would you like to speak?
So look, I think going through QUT and going through just the standard education degree as a teacher, I have heard of Socratic questions before, and really I think they equate in the school vernacular as complex or higher order questions. So teachers think that if they ask a class a complex question, they're using Socratic questions, which in part is true, but the seminar's a little bit different to just asking a Socratic question. When we ask the Socratic question, we're the teacher at the front, we have the right answer, and often we're fielding answers from our A students. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. You're almost there to a B student, and a C student we might say, oh, not quite, and then we're looking for the right answer. In a Socratic seminar, it's more about the dialogue that the students are having about a complex idea. The teacher is not there to say, I'm the person with the right answer. The teacher's saying, actually, dialogue is the way that you will learn together from your peers. So that's it in a nutshell. So you can read the table, but I think that's the difference in a nutshell. So there was a couple, do you want to do this one?
No,
okay.
You go.
There were a couple of reasons why we wanted to move away from the standard way that we do novels at Northside, or at least in our own classrooms. So a couple of reasons why is that we didn't want to just do the comprehension booklets. So here's the book, you've got to read these chapters, you need to do these comprehension questions, because we're finding that even something that's really basic like that, homework that's not graded, they're outsourcing that to ChatGPT. So the whole process becomes like, why am I doing this? So that was one of the first reasons that we're struggling with this invasive AI tech. It is definitely changing the landscape of the classroom and the sorts of learning that our students are doing. And we also were mindful that in the old method that we were using, we were looking for the right answer all the time. It was very much an input. Here's the question, I want a certain product back. It was very one way, and actually technology lends itself to producing those sorts of responses. And so we wanted to move away from those one-way exchanges, and we wanted to move away from students thinking that I can just even not read the novel, which actually, if we're going to be honest, from 10 to 12 at the end of every year, I have multiple A students come up to me and almost like a confessional. I just want to let you know I didn't read any of the books. And it's soul destroying for an English teacher. So that was another motivation as to why we were moving away from this more traditional way of doing a novel study.
So what are we aspiring towards then? Well, I hope it's the aspiration of any English teacher or any teacher in a class. We wanted to cultivate a novel study that requires students to engage with the text in personal, meaningful ways, that they are debating and thinking through the questions, the virtue and the vice that comes with any text. We wanted to participate in rigorous conversations opposed to standing up the front and fielding what answer we had pre-prepared for our students to say. And we wanted to see them discussing it with their peers, not just in our class, but also outside. We wanted to cultivate them being their own thinkers, their own agents in this world, and to leave our classrooms with a richer experience than if they had just been told what they should think about a text, specifically 1984.
Yeah, we started with a bit of a doozy.
Yeah. This is just a quote that we thought captures the Socratic method. And so I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think, is kind of the heartbeat around us doing the Socratic method in our classes.
So there were barriers, and that picture I selected because that's how we were feeling in O Week. O Week came around and I remember finding Riley and saying, what were we thinking? Why are we doing this? Not sure why. It was odd that we were feeling so nervous about trying something different, but maybe it's because we just didn't see any Australians using a Socratic seminar. And so we thought, well, who do we think we are doing it? So there was a little bit of that. Also, when you do the Socratic seminar, there is a sense of having to let go of some control. Because I think that's one thing that teachers struggle with. When we're not hearing the right answer, we just want to jump in and say, this is the answer. So it is difficult letting go of some of the control of and I guess the mindset that we have the right answer. Also in our school situation, our context, we have 3 periods a week, which they're about 60 minutes a week. And so we were committed to doing this properly, doing it well, not just doing it once and going, oh, well, I think that was okay. We committed to doing it every week. So every Friday for 6 weeks, we did a Socratic seminar. And so we really were committed to seeing it through. And so for us, that's 6 lessons, that's 6 hours where we're not doing what we normally do in class, which is teaching them the right answer. But what really, and so that was a major issue. And then also the classroom set up and pack up. So we're going to do that today in this workshop. We're going to show you how quickly it is to set it up and pack it away. But it is, again, it's that time costs a little bit to get the classroom set up. So they were the barriers.
And we are still very much in the middle of this. I think we still have 1 Socratic session
We do,
to
and
go.
the kids are begging for a combined classroom Socratic seminar, where they combine the 2 classes and we handpick 10 students from each class and they have a larger conversation. The rest of the class will sit around and watch. This is grade 10. Yeah. So we're already seeing some incredible responses from our students already.
And we'll get more to the success stories, but for now, as we implemented this, it wasn't just barriers, but then challenges along the way for us. And so there was a lot of variability in the kind of conversations we were hearing as we went around the seminar and had to kind of develop more resources and prompts to help our students dig deeper into conversation. And I think that's something that our students really struggle with, and something that I make note of in the curriculum as well, that listening is a key component in English, coming back in one of the version changes. And so teaching them the skill of listening to one another and being able to build on ideas or ask for further clarity from someone, and we'll talk more to our resources on that as well. Our key questions that we developed for the seminar heading in, we had a question for each week, kind of stifled conversation in some ways because students felt like they needed to answer that question, and anytime they deviated off of that question, they felt really anxious about the fact that they weren't doing what they were told by us. And so I think for us there was a limitation that we'd love to see change.
And what we would do, we've already worked out how we would fix that. We would do it based on reading. So we'd just say, come to the Socratic seminar this week having read chapters 1, 2 and 3, ready to share those 3 chapters, and leave it really open like that, because I think that when they had come with that in the very beginning, we had really great conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. We obviously had our reluctant students, and I think as time went on and it became less of a new thing that they were experiencing, but something that they had experienced each week, they got more and more confident. But certainly a challenge of being able to show them that they could ask questions even if they didn't feel like they had something to say.
And just on that, I've had a number of students turn up some weeks not prepared, and then find me at the end of the lesson and say, Mrs. Kennedy, I'm totally going to be prepared for the seminar next week and I plan to talk. So even the fact that, I'm thinking of, the year before, if they hadn't done their comprehension questions or they hadn't done the reading, they wouldn't care. Like, I'm just being a C student, it's what you expect. Whereas all of a sudden, because they were in a circle with their peers and they had nothing to say, it was glaringly obvious, and it wasn't the teacher going, I'm disappointed. Their peers were looking at them and they had nothing to say, and they didn't like that feeling. So that's a really a big shift, I think.
We will look at the roles in a second, but we developed 5 of them, and what we made note of quite often in our conversations was students would default to one of them, one that they were really comfortable with. They might be the curious toddler who was asking questions over and over again, but never actually providing any evidence from the text or responding to the ideas. And so just needing to challenge them and kind of push them into the different roles that they could play. And then just the pitfalls of preparation, both the lows and the highs, those who didn't show up prepared to our Socratic seminars, or those who came with pages and pages and pages of notes, either carefully strewn together themselves over a sleepless night or outsourced to ChatGPT, our great nemesis.
But so many successes. I still remember, you don't often get these giddy moments, but I remember coming out of my first lesson, and especially when you've been teaching for a fair few years now, finding Riley and going, oh my goodness, it was a success. You always have your A students that turn up to class, they've done the work, they've done the reading, they're ready to participate. But I had my B students, I had my C students turning up to class with the novel full of sticky notes, and boys too. So I just, I had goosebumps. I was just like, how can this really simple method transform the behaviour that I'm seeing? I've been teaching English for over 20 years. It blew my mind. It was almost a miracle to see boys turning up with their novels with sticky notes. Now, I have a son in the year level, in year 10. They have just embraced the novel. I had one of my son's friends, Brennan, who's just a sporty kid, he hates English. And in one of the lessons, he was there reading the novel. And I was like, if I could take a photo now, I would, and I'd send it home to your parents. Like, you are all of a sudden engaged. And yes, the novel is an engaging novel in and of itself, but there was something about the seminar that all of a sudden got students engaged, and sticky notes, my goodness.
Yeah. I think for me as well, just speaking about kind of our C students, one of my students who actually failed our first analytical piece in term 1 said the other day in a Socratic seminar, someone raised a point about the novel, and he said, I just don't see the evidence to support that claim. And just the responses that they've developed just in being able to have a conversation and point back, well, actually, that's not a strong argument that you've just made, because the novel does not suggest that at all. Can you please show me? Is incredible.
Yes. Students continuing conversations outside of I think this is a really important one. When you're a teacher and you're in academia, you're used to having rigorous conversations about ideas or texts. Students aren't. They're used to memes and, talking about things that teenagers talk about. So we actually need to model, but also allow them to have these rigorous conversations and step back a little bit and let them do it. They were improving every week. And there were some weeks where they dipped, and we'd sort of, time out, and we'd say, okay, let's try this role and this role. You're not supporting your opinions with evidence from the text at the moment. Let's try that when we head back into the ring. And then they would say afterwards, oh yeah, when we were using evidence from the novel, we didn't go round and round in circles. We actually drilled down a little bit deeper into an idea. So they were starting to see as well, okay, this works. The assessment attached to this is an unseen analytical essay. So they're spending 6 weeks talking about these ideas by analysing the text, and then they do their essay. Very quickly, students continuing conversations outside the classroom. I was walking behind 3 students as we were walking down the stairs, and I heard them saying, so I don't know about you, but I don't know, do you think Big Brother's actually a real entity, or is it just like, and I was like, just blew me away.
Pinch me moments,
yeah, and again, these weren't our A students that always do that outside of class. These were the CB boys that don't normally care to engage with text and have these sort of conversations. Okay, so we started off with the fishbowl. Now, the fishbowl arrangement is not our invention. It's we did a lot of Googling online. As Riley said, there were a lot of resources from American teachers who used Socratic Seminar in their high schools and their tertiary institutions. And the fishbowl made sense to us. So the first week, that's my class there, we had the desks and then the chairs around, and I only did that 1 week, and I think that's the thing with Riley and I, we knew we would make mistakes. We knew we'd get things wrong every week, and we just would pivot every lesson after the seminar. We felt the desks were a barrier. We felt the desks put them into the posture of student with their busy work, and so the next time we did a Socratic Seminar, we removed the desks, and they were a lot better. You can see around here, I just posted this on our Google Class, and I had student names there, and all of a sudden they were like, oh, my name's on the table, my name's in the coaching position, I've got to turn up and do a job. I better be prepared. So that was also helpful. And yeah, so probably we should just explain, just behind here, there was an American teacher online that used the sporting metaphor of a coach with a player. So the player is the person in the middle having the conversation, or you could say participant, and then the person behind them was their coach. Now you have a handout that you took when you came in. If you flip it over, that's your coach's feedback. So we actually went out and bought little, clipboards, and if a student is a coach, they sit behind the speaker or the player, and they're the coach. And so what they're doing is they're observing their player, their participant, they're taking down notes and and basically they're like that coaching teacher role. And then we hit the bell and say, okay, that's it, turn around now and please talk to your participant. So here you can see the students turning around and talking with their coach and getting some feedback, peer feedback essentially, which they've done before, no doubt, in all of your classes, but it's in that coaching role. And then once that coaching conversation's over, we say swap, and the coach becomes the player or the participant, and the participant becomes the coach. So I think Riley did it that way the whole time. So, 10 to 15 minutes talking and then swapping. So that's about 30 to 40 minutes. And then we have a bit of a wrap up. And I think you did that. You eventually went to that model, but yes, you had started.
I started with a full session. So there was a coach on the outside for the whole lesson of the hour, and then a player in the middle. And the stamina of the people in the middle was quite okay, but I think the coaches trailed off as the conversation continued and were itchy to add their own comments in. I know I had lots of students who were very eager, I just wish they talked about this idea, and they just needed that opportunity to jump in. And so we transitioned to having the whole class kind of swap over in our lessons. This is also a very iterative process. We started off with this and have developed this newer, sleeker design. But this was our initial, and I think it went through a couple of...
It went through a number of iterations as well. Yeah.
So it was a very reflective process for us this term.
And we were mad. We were like doing it a week before we were starting, and we had no idea what we were doing. But anyway. So again, I'm really sorry to the American lady who I stole these ideas from, but she had a few of the characters, and I think I added 2, which was the therapist and the builder. So I liked how she had characters, because it was easy for kids to understand different roles and go, oh yeah, I know what a therapist does, maybe. I know what a toddler does. Why? And so we felt that was an easy transitional way to kind of practice the roles. So we'll just quickly go through them, because then it'll be your turn to have a go and do this. So the detective is obvious. The detective is looking for evidence. So we would expect students in the conversation to say, let's say someone says something, they go, oh, I think Winston Smith is really an anti-hero. Someone might say, what evidence do you have from the novel to support that idea? It's as simple as that. Yep.
We have the toddler, the very curious why. So they ask questions to dig deeper into the conversation. So someone might say a very kind of superficial statement, and the toddler's role is to get them to think a bit more deeply. And that really helps us with that kind of circular conversation of everyone repeating their own ideas about the same thing, and we don't move on to actually talk about what the text is saying.
And it's funny, I have one example of a very shy CD student, a girl, who had this question that she gave, and it was quite complex. And then one of the cheeky boys said, "Why did you how did you arrive at that question? Like, where did that come from? Why did you come up with that idea?" And he was being a bit facetious because it's easy to ask why, but they had the best conversation as they unpacked that. So it is a useful role. We then have the therapist. The therapist came to me because I was at an ETAC conference recently for English teachers, and Julie Arnold, who is one of my supervisors, is so good at doing this. She interviewed an author, and she would listen to the author and then say, "So what I'm hearing is that you have done this, this, this and this." And she clarified what the author had said, and the conversation went from there. And I thought that's a really great skill, is to be able to listen and reflect back what the other student has said and then build upon that idea. That's probably one of the harder roles for the students to play. And the other day they had a seminar, and I said, "Look, I'm going to jump in and we're going to fine tune some of the roles a little bit." So Miranda had presented this really interesting quote, and they all went, "Oh yeah." And then they were about to start on a different track, and I said, "Hang on, someone needs to play the therapist here. So I'm going to model it now, but this is what I want to see you try and do, so that you can really," because what she's said and the quote she's given is excellent, but we're not pulling it apart and diving deeper. So we need someone to play that role, and then we can go deeper there. And then we had this conversation about religion that wasn't straight away apparent in the quote that she had given.
We have the devil's advocate. You'll make note that we haven't used a pitchfork or any such imagery to detail that. We are at a Christian school.
Do you want any parent complaints?
Yep. But the devil's advocate takes a contradictory position to what's being discussed. And that's really helpful when sometimes they've made an assumption about what the text is saying, and someone can bring a contrary perspective that may strike them into kind of a different discussion in the end. They realise that maybe what they were believing was a lie, or just something quite superficial, and they actually needed to think more deeply. So they might state, "I take a different stance on this issue," or "I see this idea in a different way." And we've had some really fruitful discussions in my class where people have played the devil's advocate to point us back to what is the evidence in the text, and what might it be actually suggesting.
And the builder, the one that students find a little bit easier to play, and that, but it's not intuitive or natural. So let's just say they have picked up this role really well. The builder takes someone's idea and comment and builds upon it. This helps to form transitions between speakers. I like what Riley said there, and it also gets me thinking about this. Now they can do that role really superficially and just say, I like what you said, and then they just say their opinion. So that's not quite the same thing as picking up an idea or a perspective that Riley said and trying to then take it deeper. So they still have to learn how to do it, but they feel comfortable playing that role.
It's become quite a joke in my class as well. A lot of my students will say, "Just adding on to what you're saying." And now when they see me out at lunchtime, they'll say, "So wonderful point, just adding on to what you were saying." So it's become well used in my class.
Yeah.
And lastly, just the kind of general ideas about what it means to be a participant. We wanted to have ideal conversation, and so that meant teaching them that they needed to have clarity of expression, which obviously some of the roles help with, but they needed to have eye contact, their body language needed to be open, they need to be paying attention. And it's funny how many of those skills you have to teach 15-year-olds when they're having a discussion with one another, but has been super fruitful to see them change across the time and pay more attention to one another, not just eager to read their notes on a clipboard.
Yeah. It's interesting, yesterday we just started we've got to start looking at essay writing again. We just 2 lessons back to back. And there was a moment where one of the essay questions came up, and I said, "Let's just discuss this question." And it was interesting, I was looking around the class and I could hear similar sorts of techniques that they were using in the seminar, just in the classroom. Someone listened to what someone else said and said, "Yeah, I want to build on what you just said." And then they said their opinion. I was like, yes. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your turn. So what we're going to do before we come to the question is we're going to come back to the fishbowl, and we're going to set up this room in a fishbowl. Now, because of the numbers, we'll have, so how many do we have? We can have 10 speakers, I think, and 10 coaches. Who would like to be a player / participant? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one more. Okay, 9? Okay. So now we need you to get your chairs. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. We could have a 10th one. Yep. Now, do we have 10 people to be coaches? Let's just see. So the people who are speaking, that was 10. How many? Who hasn't got a job yet? So hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 10. Excellent. All right, great. So can the 10 participants move the chairs? Okay, so your Socratic question is a doozy. What does it mean to be human? So we have our 6 to 10 speakers. So speakers, you're in the middle, you're in the inner circle, or we used to say the inner party for 1984. The outside people, you are the coaches. And everyone else will just be observing, which is not too many people, which is great. Okay, you have in your booklet a collection of poetry, artwork, articles, and a scripture, as well as the deep resources that you bring with you as an individual into this conference. So you have 10 minutes now to have a quick flick through to see, maybe just find 1 to 2 pieces of evidence. So 1 to 2 key pieces of evidence from the text to support your perspective about what does it mean to be human. Okay, so that's 5 minutes, if you can believe it. We're going to give you 1 minute to turn around and just talk to your coach, because remember, they're going to be looking at your roles that you play in the conversation. So even if you only pick up one line from Psalm 8 as your key cited evidence, that's okay, because obviously we're really cramming our time here. But your coach is looking to go, oh, okay, I love how you built upon, that lady's opinion, or it was great to see you use the why question, the toddler role. So what students can do is they just do little tallies, because obviously in a classroom setting we're talking for 20, 25 minutes. They just tally every time they see the role being played. If there's any really standout phrases that the student uses, they might write it down and say, oh, it was so great when you referenced this quote. And then they might give them some general feedback there. So if you want to now, you've got 1 minute to just chat with your coach, get to know them, find out what their name is, and then we'll start our seminar. Okay, players in the middle. You've spoken with your coaches. Coaches, your player or participant may play one role, and that's fine. They might play the detective. They might ask somebody, where did you get that idea from? Oh, I found it in Psalm 8. And then you would give them a little line next to the detective, because they asked somebody in the circle, where did you find that information? Or your player participant might say, why do you think that? And you'd give them a little slash next to toddler. If they say something interesting, write it down so that when we have time to talk about their performance at halftime, you can then say, hey, when you said this, that was great. Okay, you're not grading them, you're just giving observational notes about how they participated in the conversation. So our question today was, what does it mean to be human? You're all human. You must have some idea of what the meaning is of being human. I will hand it over to the group. I'm the teacher, I don't get to participate. I'm going to sit back up here and just watch you have a fantastic dialogue. So who would like to go first? So just in this scenario, if this was a class setting, what can happen is we can get into speculation that moves beyond the text. So it's very important in those moments to say, look, we don't want to go off on the speculation. What would happen if Winston and Julia got married? We sort of have to, as a teacher, say, well, we won't go there, that's speculation. Let's just ground it in the text that we have, because that can end up sort of getting out of control and lead them a little bit away from the assessment that we do have to do. But also in this scenario, we could go for another 10 minutes and maybe 3 people who are very confident speak and other people don't. So we also encourage students to ask somebody, what do you think? And they get good feedback if they try to get someone else into the conversation as well. I am so sorry to have to stop that, but could you see how that seminar, the conversation got deeper and deeper, and people got more and more comfortable having this really big discussion about a really big idea? Notice also, imagine though today, if I'd put you in a circle and said, I've got a question for you, and the question is, what does it mean to be human? Would you have got that deep that quickly? You know, we've only been talking for 10 minutes. And how rich it was when you had evidence and something concrete to land on as you unpacked this idea. So I guess that's one of the hallmarks of the Socratic Seminar is a text. It's a structured conversation, and it's text driven. We don't have time to actually turn around and talk to our coaches because afternoon tea has already started. But all I would say is, okay, they want to. Maybe they thought I said talk. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We have, very quickly, we have what is going to be one of the challenges that if you do the Socratic Seminar in your classes, this will happen. We have both found our Year 10 classes, the bell rings and they don't get up and leave. They want to finish the conversation. Or I've had students come up and say, they got more time than us to talk. So you can see even from just this little snapshot of an experience, I hope you got a bit of a glimmer or a sense of what it could be in your own classrooms. If you have any questions or you want any of our resources, we're good sharers. We'll share them with you. And they're on the back of the booklet as well. Thank you.